Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Tom Wells here. Today is Friday, January the 12th, 2018, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for our first daily dose of happy for the day. And it's been quite a week. We've had some really kind of wild and interesting topics that we've talked about for sure. And Tom, you're kind of bringing us back to ground zero again. We're going right back to the basics today with your topic, huh?
Yeah, this one has been really up for me actually this week, and I didn't know that that's what I wanted to talk about until, I don't know, maybe 24 hours ago. It just seemed like it just came flooding in that this is the most relevant thing for me is what's going on emotionally.
Okay.
With me.
That's fair.
And I notice it's always the issue with all my clients, of course.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is. Well, it is for everybody, really, when you think about it. But,
yeah, right, exactly.
So, give us a little intro on the topic, and then we'll do some wins, and then we'll get into it.
Okay. Well, this idea that we have an emotional guidance system is not something that I ever understood or thought about or never was introduced to me throughout my whole life until I ran into this channeled work of Abraham, and to understand that that emotions are not these big deals that I've for so long felt that they had to do with identifying my entire character, but they don't. I'm now the way I'm seeing it now. Emotions are simply vibrational indicators of where I'm at in relationship to the mixed vibration that's going on inside me. And of course, we can talk more about that during this hour, but this is what an emotional guidance system is, something that basically says you are an eternal being, and you came here to have a whole lot of fun, a whole lot of adventures, and your emotions are the thing that telling you to what degree you're aligned with the fun or the lack of fun you're having here in creating, in making this life something truly wonderful, something delicious and beautiful. And your emotions are telling you whether you're on or off in that game.
All right.
So we can get into that in more depth.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of wins, we have a big win coming up later today. I don't know exactly what time it's going to be because you can't always project it exactly and precisely, but sometime today, LOA Today is going to hit its 15,000th play.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we're doing really well. I mean, it's moving along at a really nice clip. I mean, last month we did a little over 4,000 plays, and this month we're on track for well over 6,000, maybe 7,000 plays, and it'll probably even accelerate faster than that. So,
That's great. And you're on your way to about 1 million plays, right?
That's the goal. That's where we're trying to get to this year, and I have every reason to believe we're going to get there, even though it takes a lot of multiplication and, powers to get there, but I think we're going to get there, and large part of that.
You definitely could.
A large part of it is going to be the book that we're putting together. We're getting really nice feedback from people who are life coaches saying, yeah, I'd like to do that. Yeah, include me in it and so forth. A lot of people saying, this thing's going to take off. This thing's going to be great. So clearly, I mean, we're doing that for publicity purposes. We're doing it to get more and more people aware of the LOA Today show. And I firmly believe that once more and more people are aware, they're going to listen in droves, because the people who are aware of it now, which numbers in the hundreds in terms of unique individuals, those hundreds are listening to 20, 30 shows a month, and we're putting out 45 shows a month or so. So they're listening to the majority of the shows, and they're listening cover to cover. So I know that we have a good product. I know that people are enjoying it. It's just a question of getting it into more people's hands, and it's going to happen. I'm just confident of it. So. How about,
it definitely will.
So how about you? Any wins this week? Anything really good happen?
Yeah, I had a really good experience Tuesday night going to a class I take on public speaking, and I got up in front of the room and I spoke entirely spontaneously for about 6 minutes. Not that I don't do that on the podcast all the time, but to stand up in front of a group of people and just shoot from the hip in the sense of speaking, and to be coherent and on a topic, and then to inspire people in the room a lot. I got incredible feedback. So it felt really good because I felt like I was channeling through me this wisdom or this knowing and this joy that was really uplifting to other people. And so I started a course this week in learning how to channel. And I'm really enthusiastic about this idea of letting my higher self speak through me more and more. That was one win.
That's a good win. It's a really good one. It's also a very different experience to speak publicly in front of an audience, because when we're doing the radio show, it's basically you and me, and we know that they're there, but you can't hear the breathing, you can't feel the eyes on you, and all that kind of stuff. But when you're standing in front of an audience, you feel the attention of every single person in the room. It's a palpable sensation. So it can actually knock you off balance if you're not ready for it.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I'm learning is that it's my expectation of what other people think about me that is a huge factor in my life as to whether or not I'm really having a fulfilling life or not. Because we're trained from a very early age to care so much about what other people tell us to do and what they expect of us, and we get our love and our family by doing what our parents expect of us and what our teachers expect of us. And I feel like we stand up in front of a group of people and I feel like I'm being judged, and I'm worried about losing the love of those people one way or the other, or having them be harshly critical of me, so that therefore I get an opinion of myself as I'm not enough, I'm not good enough in some way. And that's a big deal when we are trying to just live a fulfilling life.
It is
to let go of that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially when you know what you and I know, and what other LOA practitioners know, that we're essentially responsible for our own happiness. I mean, we know that. We know it deep down. We know that it's up to us. But we still feel tied into what goes on with society and what we're trained in and conditioned into society. It's not like all that just goes away instantly, So I commend you. You're going out there. You're kind of putting yourself out there and saying, you know what, I'm going to kind of face this whole thing head on, and yeah, it's probably going to be a little uncomfortable at first, but I'm going to do it anyway. Good for you.
Yeah. I'm doing it again today at the Toastmasters. In about 5 hours, I'll be giving a speech there, and I'm going to do it the same way, even though they do not recommend that. But I don't care, because I have to be alive, and for me to speak, I cannot do a canned presentation in practically any way. It's got to come from a very spontaneous place for me.
Certainly, canned presentations aren't as emotionally up as spontaneous ones. When you're just talking from the heart, everything gets higher vibrational. Everything gets happier sounding. Everything gets more interesting. It's more viable. You vibrate more. The audience notices subconsciously that you're more alive and more alert. But if you're just reading from a canned speech or memorizing a canned speech and blurting it out, it just doesn't sound the same. Just doesn't.
No, it's not very fulfilling to me to listen to somebody who does that.
Yeah.
Even if the content's good, it's just not that fulfilling.
Now, of course, when you do something like this, you really need to be in touch with your own emotional set point, don't you? Which is the topic of the show today. But that's like critical, because you want to be walking into that feeling as great as you can before you start, so that you can be, in the flow, so to speak.
Yeah, and I've been going through it for at least the last 12 hours, if not longer. I literally woke up at 2:30 this morning because of the anxiety in myself of planning to do this. But it felt good. No, it was good. It was a really good experience of going through the emotional, journey within myself of, what are my emotions telling me as I'm laying there in bed about my choice to do this. And I came to the conclusion, energetically and in my mind, that this is a good choice that I'm making, that I'm actually doing what I need to do for myself. And if it brings up some anxiety, there's a part of that is simply excitement. There's part of that is simply the love for myself, coming out in a more excited way, that I'm letting myself be more alive. That's what it comes down to. I'm letting myself be more alive. I'm following what my intuition is suggesting that I do, and that's coming from my higher guidance.
That's really good.
So that's what I'm going to speak about too.
Oh, okay. Well, good. And good for you, because you could be feeling the negative side of the anxiety and so forth, and you're choosing to try to turn the anxiety into a positive. I mean, I commend you. That's not something most people try to do, but you're doing it. That's fantastic.
Well, it's the nature of the whole show today. That's really what your emotional guidance system is all about. So if you're getting an emotion of fear or sadness or anger or disappointment or despair, It's basically just telling you that that's not how your source self sees the situation that you're facing. You know, the thing that's bringing up that sadness or that anger, or that fear, so your source self sees another path. Your source self thinks about it differently. I learned when I was really going through a lot of transformation in the last few years and studying law of attraction and changing my whole life really around law of attraction, that I could feel an emotion of anxiety, or that was one of the main emotions I dealt with. And I could ask myself, well then, okay, if this is my source self telling me that it sees it differently, then how do you see it, source self? You know, like,
right.
What? And I would get more and more subtle about that. I would wake up in the morning, I'd step out of my bed, and I'd be feeling this anxiety, and I would say, okay, so what is another way of seeing this? And that started to become my mantra, in a sense, like, okay, so what's the other way of seeing this that is actually empowering to me? That's actually the direction I want to go. So all of a sudden, say it was anxiety about not having enough money, then it would be like to begin to understand that Source sees it as it is a completely abundant universe. Source sees it that every single brand new moment is a brand new possibility of how I could attract wealth into my life, how I could attract abundance into my life, or simply the perspective that I already have a great big savings account. So why am I so worried? You know, and things like that. You know, I have a coaching business that's producing income. So, you know, it was just sort of taking the edge off this habitual thing I learned as a kid, which was to worry. It was like a habit I learned in a way.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're all trained
rather
to it.
than, yeah. So it's all vibration. You know, that's the amazing thing, in that your navigation system is no different than the navigation system on your phone or in a car. It's just always telling you the best path to get back to where you want to get to.
And it's fascinating.
And that's what the emotions are.
It's fascinating to me that when I first read about through Abraham and learned the idea that our inner being is always looking at us in the most positive, optimistic light, always, in all situations, so that when we're feeling a negative emotion, what it really means is that we are not in alignment with our inner being. When we're feeling a positive emotion, we're in alignment, as opposed to not being in alignment. And that caught my attention, and still catches my attention to this day. I still think a lot about that. I never thought of emotions that way previously. I mean, that's about as far away as, you know, as I thought about emotions as you can possibly get. I thought emotions were just something that occurred in response to outside stimuli, and that was pretty much it. You know, the idea that they're tied strictly to what's going on inside me was like diametrically opposite. It wasn't even in the same ballpark. It was crazy. You know, but now that I've learned that and understand that and internalized it to a fairly good degree. I'm still learning to do it, but I've internalized it fairly well. I now understand that every time that there's a situation that goes on where I don't like what somebody else is doing or saying, or I don't like a situation that's happening, the feeling isn't because of that situation. I mean, sometimes I'd have to remind myself that. I have to stop and say, you know, I'm feeling angry at this person right now, but it isn't the person. It isn't the person. It's me just being out of alignment with my own inner being.
Yeah,
that takes
a great realization.
That takes a while to really, you know, kind of take that in, because that's completely different from what we believe as we're growing up, as we get, you know, become adults in society and so forth. It just doesn't match our normal everyday experience. We have to remind ourselves of a completely different way of thinking, and we have to do it throughout the day if we want to be able to make the shift and truly be in alignment with our own being, and therefore be able to manifest all the stuff we're trying to manifest. Because that's why we're trying to do this, right? We're trying to become deliberate creators. We're trying to become deliberate attractors, so that when we say, I want to attract X, X shows up. Well, this is how you do it. You do it by getting yourself into that alignment with who you really are. And the cool part, the hard part of that, and I detected the hard part very early on. In fact, I even responded to somebody on Facebook just before we started the show today who was having a little trouble with it. Early on, it seemed like every single thought going through my mind, every single conversation I had, every experience had a really strong negative tinge to it, a negative aspect to it. And I asked myself, how on earth do you think positively when everything coming through your mind is negative? That's what this person I was responding to was basically saying. She was trying various things and nothing was really working for her, and she's relatively new to it. And so I just wrote back to her, you're not alone. I mean, when I started, it seemed like every thought I had was negative. Actually, before I started, I didn't think I had any negative thoughts. Then my wife pointed out to me how I was actually expressing things negatively all the time. I took a little inventory, realized that much to my chagrin, it was true, and said, okay, well, now what am I going to do about it? And then ran into The Secret, ran into Abraham, and started learning this stuff and realized very quickly that, well, if I'm going to turn stuff around, I actually have to get control of my own thoughts. And most of those thoughts are, like, 99% of them are negative. Oh, my God. I mean, that's the way it felt. Oh, yeah, it's huge. And what I told her is essentially what happened. It didn't happen overnight. It took me a while to turn that around. And you think about it, like Wendy says, there's a lot of momentum behind that. There's a lot of negative momentum you're trying to slow down and turn around to go the other way. So it can take a while. But the most important thing that I did, and again, what I said to the woman I was responding to online, I made it a point not to worry so much and not to focus so much on what other people said that they did that made them feel positive. Because that isn't necessarily what would make me feel positive. I mean, if somebody gave me an idea like doing affirmations, it worked for them and it worked for me, great. But it actually, what really happened is when I read other people saying, "We'll do affirmations," and I did affirmations, I felt nothing. I got no value out of it. It took me a long, long time before I even felt like I moved the needle with affirmations. So I said, well, affirmations isn't going to be the way for me to do it. I got to find a better way, something that works better for me, because I'm a different individual from them. Okay, so that just means I have different interests. I have different things that excite me. All right, so what does excite me? And I made it my quest to find out what excites me, to find out what really jazzes me and helps me zoom faster into that positive zone. And you know what I found? It took me years to find this one. But what I found for me was music. Listening to music, particularly when I'm out, walking or just doing something, for fun or for exercise, just playing music, playing it from my iPhone and just listening to it. And specifically, not just any music, specifically music that had a very positive message and a positive upbeat feel to it, so that song after song after song was great feeling. And if I play that, I get high on that very quickly, much more quickly than I would have anticipated. So it took me a while, but I found my thing. And that's what you really have to do. You have to find your thing. Just because somebody else's thing is X doesn't mean that's going to be your thing. You got to find your own. And when you find it, then you just go with it. You keep doing it over and over again. And then all of a sudden, those huge numbers of negative thoughts that you're dealing with, they start to reduce. In fact, they start to reduce fairly quickly. And all of a sudden, you find yourself thinking positively a lot. And you say, whoa, this is a really weird place to be. I'm not used to this. But that's great. That's my approach to how you control your emotional set point.
Well, it reminded me of something I just read from Abraham, where they were saying that if you want to get more in touch with your emotional guidance system and know what your inner being is really calling you to, because, all throughout our life, we're putting into our vortex, into this reservoir of possibility for ourselves, we're putting in constant requests for things that we want, because when we know what we don't want, then we put into that vortex, into that place, we put the things we do want, or when we know what we do want, we put that in there. And then it's just a question, the universe immediately answers us and it creates that thing in that virtual vibrational reality. And then for us to let it come into our lives and actually manifest, we just have to get up to speed with what's in there. And so they said that so many people in our day and age they're suppressing what their feelings really are, and they're tolerating an experience of negativity. They're tolerating an experience of, say, pessimism or like you said, negative feelings. 99% of the time, they're having negative feelings, but they're tolerating it, and they're saying, well, I'm just taking whatever manifestations show up in my life, because I can grin and bear it, because I can tough it out, because I was taught, just to keep my nose to the grindstone and just keep going for it. And I don't, really know what I really want, but I'm getting by. I'm getting by. I'm working this job. I'm living my life with my family or my friends, and I'm doing the best I can, and it's good enough. But Abraham said, if you want to know what your inner being, and if you want those things that are really in your vortex, those things that you've put in there that are so wonderful for you, you've got to start asking yourself, which is exactly what you did, is ask yourself, what do I really want in my life? What do I really want in terms of relationship? What do I really want in terms of friendships and money and possessions and feeling good and health? Start asking ourselves those things. I mean, that's something that's on my agenda right now. I realize I've got to start getting clearer in the area of relationship and in the area of income. I want to ask myself more, well, what is it that I want? Like how much money would I really like to have, and for what reason, and what kind of relationship would I really like to have with a woman so that it really does fulfill what I want, because I'm only going to get what I ask for. And only when my vibration is up to speed with the thing that I want will I know what it is I want.
And
so when we ask for what we want, then we start feeling it more. And if it feels uncomfortable, like you did, you started feeling the discomfort of your own negativity. So then you started looking for what's the thing that will get my vibration to where I want it to be, right?
Yeah. In fact, it wasn't so much that I was thinking about things. I was thinking about what makes me feel good, period. I wasn't even at the point yet where I could think about, well, I want to attract a certain amount of money or the right relationship. I couldn't even get that far. I tried doing that, and that didn't work for me. I had to get in touch with what it was I wanted emotionally. What was the emotional? I knew what, in general, I wanted the positive feelings. I knew that much, but I didn't know how to get there. And like you said, I mean, I was like most males, right? We males, we get very heavily, strongly, roughly conditioned to just repress those emotions. So that explains why I didn't know I was depressed. That explains why I didn't know I was negative all the time. I was out of touch with my own emotions. But even more than that, even if I tried to get in touch with them, I didn't have enough experience with them. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what would make me feel good. I had to find that. That takes a little time. Then when you find that, then it becomes a lot easier to say, okay, now that I know what makes me feel good, well, now I can start asking the question, well, what things do I want to attract? But the emotions have to come first, I think.
Yeah. I had an experience with affirmations of making them work for me. I had lived in ashrams and spiritual centers all around the country for 10 years, from age 23 to 33. And when I got out of that, I was pretty disoriented because I had lived a monastic lifestyle for 10 years, and I had been completely taken care of in that ashram. And all of a sudden it was ended in 1983, and I was back out on the street, and I had to figure out what to do with my life. And it was so disoriented. And a friend of mine said, would you like to go to work for me in my telephone company? He had a small company that installed business telephone systems. And I said, I don't know, I guess so. And so I started, he even let me move into his place with him, and I started working with him. And I learned that about affirmations at that time. So I got cassette tapes, and I made this huge amount of affirmations that all were statements of how I would like my life to be in every area, from emotions to money to relationships to everything. And as I would drive around doing sales calls for this selling phone systems, I would have this cassette running all the time. I don't even think I listened to music for a year. It's like I just listened to these affirmations, and I would do them in the first person, second person, and third person. So I would say, I now have, I now make $5,000 a month minimum, or whatever the affirmation was, and I would say it in the first person, second person, and third person. And I swear, it changed my entire life. It was like I just watched my whole being change by simply listening to this and believing it. But I believed it so much. And that's the only time in my life that affirmations have really worked. I've tried to use them since, and I've had more experience, like you said, where they just seem flat. I can't kind of get myself all psyched up about them. Although I do say certain things to myself still, like, all is well. I say that one a lot, and it completely resonates with me because I totally believe that all is well ultimately, so that if anything comes up, I kind of can calm myself pretty quickly, just saying everything's okay, all is well. It's going to be fine. Just keep on the track you're on, and keep doing the right stuff for your heart and your soul and your mind and your body. And that's one thing I do.
Isn't that interesting, though? Because you did use the affirmations early. They worked well for you, and then later on they stopped working for you. I mean, clearly that means your interest and your preferences changed in some significant way so that listening to the affirmations just wasn't cutting it anymore. But it's all within one person. We're not talking about two different people who had two different experiences. We're talking about one person who had two different experiences.
Yeah, and I do kind of believe that I could probably resurrect that, but the energy that it takes to get that all going, it's not in the flow for me any longer. That, there was a time when I was just so preoccupied with my own personal transformation that I was working on it all the time. And now I've come to realize that eventually became one of my biggest things keeping me from having the life I wanted to have was I was trying too hard. The biggest realization I had when I really got into LOA strongly 4 years ago was that LOA was immediately listening to Abraham was teaching me, you have to chill out, dude. You got to relax. You're so worried about your happiness and you're so worried about having the things you want in your life that you're not ever going to get them because of that. That was the very thing keeping me from having the job I wanted, the career I wanted, the income I wanted, the relationships I wanted, the kind of feeling inside my being, the emotional state of peace I wanted was all being held back because I was trying so hard to get there.
Yeah, it's true. And, when you look at the three universal laws as Abraham lays them out, the first one's the law of attraction, which is literally, it's not any kind of an action thing per se. It's just that everything vibrates and like vibrations attract like vibrations. That's pretty much the limit of what the law of attraction itself says. Second law being the science of deliberate creation. That's where you're trying to apply your thought. You're trying to be deliberately the creator. It's saying, okay, I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to focus on that. I'm not going to focus on that. It's being selective and so forth. And then the third one, that's the one that you were just talking about. The third one is the science of allowing, where, okay, you put the request out there. Now you just trust, you let go, you release, you say, okay, I'm going to let it in now. And you just get out of the way. You let you get the negatives out of the way. You get yourself into that positive place and just stay there and believe. And that's the hard part for somebody who's trying too hard. We don't get ourselves into the allowing place, so the stuff can't show up.
Yeah. Right. And if I would have understood my emotional guidance system during all those years that I struggled, I would have realized that my emotions were telling me this is not the way to go.
Yeah, you weren't feeling good.
Pardon?
I said you weren't feeling good.
Right. I was trying to create a speech, like an hour-long speech, and I worked on this on and off for a year. And it was very frustrating because I couldn't understand why is this so hard for me. I'm trying to write a speech and then practice it and get to the point where I could go deliver it to the public.
That's a long time, a year working on one speech. I'm just sitting here thinking about that. That's a long time.
It was a long time. But I was stuck. It was like having writer's block. And I didn't know why I was stuck. And it took me a while to, when I started getting into Abraham, I started to realize that I was stuck because I was believing that I had to pay a big price in order to get a big reward. I felt like it was just something I learned as a kid, that if you want to get an A in school, this is how I perceived it. I've got to produce a report that is totally kick-ass. It's got to be really an awesome report, full of pictures and full of incredible descriptions that I spent hours making that report. And that's what I would do. And so I'd turn in these great big thick things and I would get A+, Tommy, you're incredible. And it'd be like, yeah, I know I'm the bomb. But what I learned was, that if you want to get, I taught myself that if I want to get rewarded, I have to go to extreme ends to get it. And I didn't believe that I could get a result in a simple way. I didn't believe I could get a result from making an effort that felt just easy to me, that felt kind, that felt nurturing, that felt fun, right? Mm-hmm. It had to be like this massive effort. And then I would get off on the fact that I tried so hard. So if like my mom says, you should cut the lawn for your dad, so when he gets home, the lawn's all cut. So I wouldn't just cut the lawn. I would spend 2 solid hours. I would edge the entire thing with a shovel. I would trim every bush. I would cut it twice. And then when he came home, he'd go, oh, wow, looks really good. And he'd walk in the house. But my mom would always go, oh, you did such a great job. You made your dad so happy and so proud. My dad wouldn't actually say that to me, but my mom would.
If you want a job, my wife's gardening business, we can always find, work for people who really know how to do nice edging and nice pruning and all that kind of stuff. So come on over,
Yeah, if you'll fly me back and put me up in a nice
hotel. There you go, right.
No, I actually can't do that. I can't do that work anymore. It hurts my back too much. I worked too hard during my life. I tried too hard with all the different physical things I ever did. I would work so hard to do such a good job that I was a perfectionist, And now my body in my 60s, it's kind of messed up because I tried so hard,
So you got to be kind to yourself now. Yeah, well, being kind to yourself is also important because I think when you're kind to yourself, that's when you find what jazzes you. It's hard to find what jazzes you when you're pushing it so hard. In fact, you really can't because you don't allow yourself to be in that place where you say, "So, what is it that I enjoy? I can't remember anymore."
Yeah, and that's why if like in this emotional guidance system stuff, if we let our emotions be simply indicators of what our vibration is, and that's it. They're simply telling us, that you're not in tune right now with your higher self, with what your higher self wants for your life, the thing that you most really want. So, get back in tune with that. And interestingly, one of the best ways to get back in tune is to relax and take the pressure off ourselves when we're feeling a negative emotion. Like when I'm feeling a negative emotion, I just accept it. And I go, okay, I'm feeling afraid. Like last night, waking up at 2:30 in the morning. Okay, I'm feeling anxious about getting up there and winging it in front of 25 people at the Toastmasters meeting. But just to accept the fact that that's the way I feel, and then to kind of I just feel it in my body. I let it move around, and then I look for what's it telling me about getting realigned with what it is that is going on inside me. And it was nice that it eventually came to this place of great peace inside myself. So by the time I got out of bed, I was feeling this incredible peace and realized, wow, if I can walk into that Toastmasters room and get up in front of everybody with that kind of peace, I'll definitely say some good things. There's no question.
That's good. Well, if listeners are finding that this is a podcast full of good things, I just want to urge you to take a moment and send a message to friends of yours who have an interest in or are attracted to the law of attraction, and just tell them that you're getting good stuff here. We're trying to spread the message far and wide that the podcast exists, because when people do listen to it, we know from the analytics they listen to it a lot. They listen to it large chunk of the shows that we put out each month. Currently, the average is about 22 podcasts per unique listener, and we put out 45 a month. So we know people are listening, and that they're listening repeatedly. So we're just asking you, put it out there because your friends are going to appreciate it. If they're really into the law of attraction, if they're into self-improvement and attracting what they want into their lives, you're doing them a favor when you're sharing the show. So just, take a moment, send it a message on Facebook or, Twitter or whatever, and whatever your social media preferred modality is. Just put it out there because they'll appreciate it, and we'll appreciate it too.
Great.
So getting back to it, now the whole emotional set point, the whole emotional guidance system, we've talked about how important it is to have the awareness of it. But sometimes we find ourselves trying to move quickly on it, and one of the things that Abraham talks about is you really can't jump from low to high. You have to go incrementally.
Yeah.
So talk about that for a second.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that is actually kind of what I wanted to just talk about right now too. It's that when I'm in a negative emotion, often, like let's say I'm feeling a lot of fear or anxiety, at those times it's not easy for me to say to myself, oh, this is an indication that I need to get back in alignment with my joy, and then, okay, let me just jump right to joy. I can't often. And And I notice that with my clients.
I've never been able to go from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds flat. I just can't do that. I don't know anybody who can. Is that really possible?
Well, not only that, you can't stop the momentum. It's like Abraham talks about, if your train is going 80 miles an hour in one direction, you can't suddenly stop that train and reverse and go the other direction. So
right.
If we've developed a momentum about fear, a momentum about, we're angry at some particular thing about the government, or we're angry about our partner, or we're angry about something, we're dealing with our health, or we're dealing with a health issue, and it's been developed over years. We've got this condition in our body. Well, that's not going to change. Those things aren't going to change overnight, like you say. We have a momentum about those things, and in order for them to reverse and begin to go the opposite direction, it takes a lot of patience and a lot of love with ourselves, and recognizing the fact that, okay, I want to change my vibration. What's it going to take for this vibration to change? And that's where all the techniques come in, like using affirmations, or like you said, starting to take a notebook and writing, well, what would I prefer my life to be like if I could have it the way I want it? Or when I have my life the way I want it, what will my friendships be like? What would that relationship be like with my partner when I have that relationship the way I want it? What will it be like when I have the amount of money in the bank that I want to have? When my health is the way I want it, how will I feel? What's going to be the way I'm going to feel that's going to be so great, that's going to be so good? And what are the things I'm going to do when I'm feeling better? And, that's sort of the slow tuning of our vibration back to that place that's more aligned with what is already in our vortex, which is a completely healthy body, which is fantastic relationships, which is a great amount of money in the bank. All that stuff is there because we know how much we want it. We've put that in our vortex. And now, yes, we got to slowly get our speed, our momentum up. That was one of the main things I said when I was going through my life transformation over the last 4 years was, gradual change is cool. I even put that as one of the main points I work with my clients. Accepting gradual change is just important. That if it's going to change gradually, that's okay. Sometimes it does change really quickly, right?
And it's not just the change in the experience of the improvements in the life either. It's also a change in the emotional feelings themselves. I mean, if you're feeling depressed, or you're feeling fearful, or you're feeling anxious or whatever, trying to get immediately to joy is not your best play. Your best play is to get to a feeling that is less negative and maybe slightly positive, and not reaching too far so that you can get there. Otherwise, you try and you fail. You try to get to that high place and you fail to get there, and you feel like, well, I'll never get there. And then you just end up staying in that negative place.
Yeah. And Abraham has talked a lot about that emotional scale, that goes all the way from the very bottom, it's depression, despair, and hopelessness, and at the very top, it's joy and ecstasy. And then there's all these emotions in between. And if we're way down in depression and we're locked in our room 24 hours, and we finally come out and start yelling at everybody in the house, they say that's better.
Yeah.
It's better that you're now you're alive. Okay. And you go over and you open the window, and you finally, start breathing the air in, and, you're angry, but, maybe that anger then slowly transforms into, a bit of hope, and
it reminds me of
starting to feel.
It reminds me of the movie from 1980, 1979, something like that, called Network, and all the images of the people. Did you ever see that movie?
Oh, is that about the news network?
Yeah, the news network that the broadcaster, the anchor, decides just to kind of go off on a rant because he's so frustrated, and he says, "I want everybody to go to the window and shout out as loud as you can. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore." And then you see these scenes of people leaning out their windows. "I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore."
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times that's what we need to do, is just take it up a notch. I found that that's a little bit confusing to me, to go and try to imagine going from depression to anger. But I know what it is. I mean, I've definitely watched that process take place in myself, where I've gone from feeling, kind of hopeless and shut down about, like something about the environment, where I feel like, oh, we're never going to stop driving, gasoline fueled cars, that are causing the environment to heat up. And then eventually, getting to a point where I'm angry enough that I'm talking about it all the time and going to programs at, the university that are talking about environmental change, and what's it going to take for things to change. And so, yeah, taking those steps up that emotional scale is a good way to look at it.
And you don't want to just stay there either. I mean, it's good to do things to get the anger out and recognize it and so forth, but you don't want to stay there. You don't want to live in getting the anger out. You want to move up. Yeah. You want to move up to the next. I'm not sure what's next on the Abraham scale, but a few notches up is where you start to feel, not great, but a little bit indifferent, and maybe even get to neutral. And then one day you find yourself in hope and like, oh, wait a minute, I'm in positive. How did I get here?
Yeah. And I think it's important to realize that, we're never going to not have these emotions, because it's just part of, like, let's say you finally get the $500,000 you were trying to get to, or the $1 million that you wanted to get to, and it doesn't mean that just because you finally have that money that you're not going to have contrast again in your life. A lot of times we get to a certain place of something we thought was going to make our lives so much better, and it makes our lives better for a little bit, but then, we start getting that hankering to have something more, and just because we're on the leading edge of creation here, and we are leading edge creators. We are eternal beings, and we're always going to be creating, even beyond when we leave this body. The way I understand it, we just, that's our thing, is to create. And in order to create, we create contrast because it propels us towards that creation somehow. Part of me doesn't want it that way. Part of me says I would like it just to be peaceful all the time. But in reality, I don't think I would. I think I would get, pretty bored. I notice, like, when people retire, a lot of times they start doing all those things retired people do. They go to the golf course and they go to the movie and they, go do this and go do that, go out to eat, but in a lot of ways, to me, that's like a death sentence, because I'm sure it could be fun, and I'm sure lots of retired people are having a blast. But for me, I feel like I just want to stay as alive as I can possibly be. I want to keep creating and creating.
Oh, I'm with you. Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. And in fact, one of the things that really caught my attention after I had been learning how to get in touch with my own feelings and recognizing that I had all the negative thoughts, and then working on that for some time, and actually getting to the point where I would every once in a while touch the positive end of the range and so forth. As I did that, I began to realize my emotional set point is not fixed in stone. It doesn't always stay in one place. It actually bounces around, and I didn't realize that. But once I began to realize that, then I said to myself, well, shoot, if it's bouncing all over the place, I guess I really can move it a lot more easily than I previously believed, because I originally didn't believe I could move it at all. I don't know if I told you that. My original feeling was that...
Oh, yeah, I think you did, Tom.
Did I? Yeah. I mean, my emotions were driven by whatever happened externally, so therefore they were not in my control, so, I was just kind of locked in. And then I kind of bought into the idea that they were within my control, but everything was just so negative, and it just didn't seem like I could move, so moving the emotional set point was difficult. But when I realized that our emotions actually kind of bounce around, then I said to myself, I guess it isn't all that stuck. I guess I actually can move it fairly easily. And then I really could at that point. That's when the belief started to kick in. And that belief is necessary,
It's what?
The belief is necessary. You have to have that belief. If you don't believe that your emotional set point is movable, you're working against yourself. The moment you start to believe that you can move it and that you can move it in a fairly good way, then you can.
Exactly. When I was going through changing from a state of being pretty almost depressed a good amount of the time, because I had lost, I'd lost my home in a divorce, so I no longer had a house. I know I lost half of my savings, lost my wife in the divorce, of course.
Sure.
And lost my health at that time. And then my business I had for 27 years all of a sudden was no longer a viable way to make money. And so I'd lost a lot. And I'd gotten kind of depressed over the years since that had happened. And the biggest thing that pulled me out of all of that was when I started to listen to Abraham, and they said that make your dominant intent every day to feel good no matter what. So I probably talked about this before, but I put it up on my mirror. I put the quote from Abraham that said, is my dominant intent from this moment forward to feel good, to choose feeling good throughout this day no matter what. And every day I would look at that, and I really realized I totally had that ability to make that choice, that I could literally say that I was going to feel good, and I would. It was just a choice, and I realized I could just choose that, and that was cool. Like, sounds like you did the same thing.
Well, I know something else that's cool. You lost your wife, your home, your income, and your health, and you were only a little depressed. Like, how on earth did you do that?
No, I wasn't only a little depressed. Because I always believed that life was resilient, and I was resilient. And so right after it all happened, I said, oh, this must be for the good. So I'm going to make the best of it. And now I'm going to meet somebody I really want to be with more than my wife, and now I'm going to create a better career than that other one. I never wanted to do that one anyway. I did it because it was really nice setup, but it wasn't what I really wanted to do. It wasn't using my talents to the fullest. It wasn't letting myself express myself to the fullest. I said, okay, now I'm going to do all that. But when I really got depressed was when I failed at making all that happen at first. And my health continued to get bad, and I continued to not see the income I needed coming in. And so that's when the depression started to come.
Oh, okay.
Is when I started seeing myself fail. And I actually got to the point for the first time in my life where I let thoughts about suicide even into my head, not that I was thinking that I was going to do it, but I was sitting there laying in my bed one night in 2012 or something going, I can't even believe that I'm actually in this place where I wonder if it's worth going on, because I never thought I'd in my life ever be at that place. And that was a good wake-up call to me, but it was also hard. It was hard to accept the fact that it felt that difficult to me. And that wasn't actually the main impetus that made me change. It was, I just continued to work on myself because I wouldn't give up. I was tenacious. And, but the thing that actually caused the change was when, I ran into a psychic who told me, you need to get into Abraham, and you need to get into a couple other things she told me about. And that's when things really turned around. It was like a total godsend. It was so different than all the other things. I was using energy psychology and tapping and, anything I could possibly imagine. I was trying, and I still was pretty depressed,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And not seeing the movement. But once I started listening to Abraham, I listened to these 3-hour programs every week, a live feed that would come in here in Boulder, Colorado, and it was just like being handed the manna from heaven. It was just sort of like, here's your holy grail. If you now know the way to be happy. And that's why I became a life coach using these methods, because I've made this huge personal transformation. And that's why I've really studied all these different aspects of the law of attraction, because I made them work for myself. And now I'm helping clients make them work for themselves.
I think that happens with a lot of people, not so much becoming coaches, although certainly a number of people do become coaches, but more you kind of flail around a bit, right? You try everything you can think of to try, and what's getting you going and what's making you do that is you don't want to stay in that space. I didn't want to stay in that space. Let me put it that way. I didn't want to stay in that place of feeling like everything was falling apart. And it was the same thing for me. Income, not my relationship, thank God. My relationship with Louise was great all along throughout that. I'm not sure what I would have done if that hadn't been there. But my income was in constant decline. The relationship was good. My health was actually pretty good too. but the income being in decline was really doing a number on me in a big way, to the point where I was feeling bad all the time. I was truly depressed. I didn't really label it as depressed right early on, but after a while I recognized, I guess I really am depressed. And I didn't want to stay there. That's what got me going. I didn't want to stay there. I was so sick of it. I just had to find some way out. So I literally flailed around. I tried anything that I could find, like you were doing. I was just trying all this different stuff. And, some things like I heard about tapping, and I tried it for 3 seconds and I was done. I'm like, nope, sorry, this is not for me. If this works for other people, great. It is not for me. It just doesn't do it for me. So I'm out of here. But I tried a lot of stuff, and I would try, what are different ways that I can just put positive messages in my head? And so I tried the affirmations, and I tried tapes and so forth. I tried making a tape. I tried making a few tapes. I tried doing a lot of different things like that, and most of them weren't really working, and most of them weren't really getting me there. But eventually you try enough things, you do get there. And certainly the Abraham stuff has really helped me a lot. One of the things that helps me a ton is that there is one particular segment, about a 10-minute segment, where Esther, voicing Abraham at a workshop, just did one long series of positive statements that you could kind of treat as affirmations. The positive statements were things like, I love the fact that I am an eternal being, and that I come from a place of eternal beings, and that everybody in that place is focused on me. They're always sending me love all the time. It was like this long series of things like that. And so I just started using that as my affirmation thing. Like, I don't do affirmations well, so I'll just listen to somebody else doing affirmations, right? And right. I turned that. It's actually, you can find it on YouTube. I think the way to find it is to look for Abraham Hicks Before You Go to Sleep Tonight. If you look for that, you'll find it. And by playing that first when I went to sleep, and then when I wake up in the morning, and doing that on a pretty regular basis, I found that was really having a very strong positive impact on helping me get rid of the negative thoughts. The negative thoughts weren't coming up nearly as often. And I was noticing more and more that positive stuff was happening. I can't say that I zoomed right to the top immediately. That's not the way it worked. But I was moving, which I wasn't doing with the other modalities. I was moving upward. I was increasing. I was improving. So I've stuck with it. And to this day, I still listen to it. I almost always listen to it going to bed. I don't always listen to it when I wake up. But I do at least get it once a day. And it makes a difference. It makes it easier, among other things, to sleep. I mean, if you have a problem with insomnia, I thoroughly recommend using that tape, because when you play it, it calms your mind enough that you can go to sleep. It really does help. So that was one of my things awesome. That I found,
It's called Before You Go to Sleep Tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a rampage of appreciation. I love their rampages of appreciation. That's even one of the techniques that they suggest that you develop. But a person, any of us can develop the ability to do rampages of appreciation and I feel like it's still something I'm working on, to be able to say a long string of incredibly positive things that are very true for me, like that. I know that I'm an eternal being. I know that I have these constant others in the unseen realm that are helping me. It feels so good to know that this day to day I can choose throughout this entire day, that I can choose to feel good no matter what, and that I have the wherewithal to allow that to happen in my life, that the grace is there, the blessing is there in this life for this life to really work out well for me, and on. And it's such a good thing to develop. You've reminded me that I want to actually, put some effort into doing that more.
It's important.
I know there are others that do it. I've ran into people who practice law of attraction, and they do rampages of appreciation, and that's a good thing to get good at.
I think it's something that we all need without realizing it, because we are living in a society that inundates us with negative messages constantly through the news, through politics, entertainment. Most songs, how many songs are about depressing themes, right? My girlfriend left me, I'm depressed. The blues, they have an entire genre called the blues, which ironically was originated by African Americans who were trying to find a way to express a positive feel, but nevertheless the subject matter was all about depression. So we have all these things coming at us that are so negative. We need to have a rampage. I don't really like the word rampage, but we need to have a constant stream of positivity because it's, first of all, it's so different from our normal experience that we get from society, and second of all, it's good for us. And when you get one that really resonates with you, you feel the difference. It's a big difference. So
it is.
I recommend it. I recommend finding a way to either do it yourself or to find somebody else's. That's why I like the Abraham one. That way I don't have to think about it. I just listen to it. I just go with whatever they're saying. That's where the positive music worked for me. I told you having a series of positive songs, a playlist of positive songs to just keep playing over and over again, randomly picking a different song every time out of my list of 40 or whatever it is. Doing that gets me there fairly quickly. I usually find myself smiling in 15 minutes without any reason at all, just because I'm listening to the positive music. So it really does work to have that kind of stream. Yeah.
I love that, because we don't realize how much what we're saying to ourselves is affecting us and what we're hearing. And a lot of it, of course, for me, and it sounds like for you, has been, what we say to ourselves. And that stuff is pretty subtle, and start to catch it, the fact of what am I saying to myself throughout the day,
Oh, yeah.
And start noticing more and more that some of those things, a lot of them are just old habitual ways of thinking about a particular thing in my life, or just, whatever it is, it's just old thinking that needs to be replaced with more positive thinking, with other ways of looking at the same situation that are more uplifting, that are more transformative, that are more fun, that are more easy, that are more enthusiastic, all those adjectives you can imagine that are on the positive end of the emotional scale. Can we bring those things alive more by talking about it to ourselves, talking about our lives in ways that are more uplifting to us?
Absolutely.
But I feel like I just get complacent.
Who doesn't?
It's this thing that Abraham said, that we tolerate a bit of negative emotion, and we don't realize that's what we're doing.
That's true. Yeah.
But we're still more on that side of pessimism than we are on that side of optimism.
And by the way, for people who are listening to the podcast, if you've been listening this long and you haven't subscribed, well, it's about time you did, because you can tell you get a daily dose of happy by listening to this. In fact, you get it twice daily, because Monday through Friday we're actually doing it at 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. For instance, today on Friday, Tom's doing it with me this morning, and that's 8 a.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. 4 p.m. Eastern Time, it's Wendy Dillard doing it with me, but there are different co-hosts doing the show every day, Monday through Friday, and plus I do it with David on Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, so there's a lot of opportunities to get it. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. People who subscribe listen over and over again to all the different episodes. There's a lot of really good content that we're talking about, and it's all positive. The way to subscribe is to go to loatoday.net. That's the easiest and direct way, because there are little links there you can click on that says click here to subscribe. And as long as you have some sort of podcast software, it will just hook it all together and boom, you'll be subscribed. It's particularly easy on an iPhone. You can do it that way. You can also do it on the iPhone by going to the iTunes store and just searching on LOA Today will pop right up. In fact, if you use the built-in podcast software on an iPhone, again, it pops right up if you just search on LOA Today. On Android phones, on Samsung and Google phones and so forth, I've actually been giving out the wrong information. I didn't realize it because I use an iPhone. But Wendy, who uses an Android, corrected me on it. So when you go to your Android phone, to your Samsung or whatever, what you want to do is go to the Play Store if you don't already have podcast software. If you have podcast software, great, just do a search using your software and you'll find LOA Today. But if you don't have software, you need to go to the Google Play Store, which is just labeled Play Store on your Android. Click on that, and one of the free ones, there are a lot of free ones you can get. The one that I would point to is one called Podcast Manager. Just download and install that app. And then once you've installed it, then you can use that to search for LOA Today and find us that way. So I just wanted to make sure I correct that. In fact, I'll do that over the next few shows because I've been kind of leading people down the wrong path, Tom. And iPhone users have been signing up, and Android users were signing up half as often. That's not fair,
Wow.
So
you got that clear.
Now, also, you mentioned you do the coaching for people who want a little assistance. How can they reach you?
They can go to my website, which is youarejoy.com. That's youarejoy.com, and they'll see in the navigation bar free coaching session there's a page that they can fill out their name and email, and then I will contact them, and we'll set up a free hour of coaching about any topic they would like, so they could see if they would like to do coaching with me in the future.
Sounds great. Tom, it's been a pleasure. I can't wait to talk to you again on Monday.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to it. We'll hope we'll have a great topic then, too, I'm sure.
All right. And we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.